Good morning and welcome to Haventree Parent Podcast, where we get a chance to talk about something that's important to us and to you before the kids wake up.
Today, we are going to be answering the question, do we ever fight?
All right, so let's get your feet up and ready. Let's go. So today, like you said, we're going to talk about do we fight? And yeah, definitely there have been many, maybe. I don't know how. Is there a number that you have to reach or not reach to be considered fights? And I think there's a lot of there's always the small battles of like, oh, you didn't do the dishes, you forgot to do the laundry, you forgot this, forgot that. Like there's the forgetfulness fights. I'll say that's like one corner.
Or annoyances.
Yeah. And the annoyances, like you have to chew so loud, all those type of things. Which are like we're saying there is, ridiculous fights or things that irritate us that might make it appear that we're fighting.
But that are more just like friendly sniping almost.
Yeah, exactly. And I did a sneaky poll before this topic. I went and asked the kids, or at least I asked Adri, because the other kids, I don't think they even know what fighting argument is.
Adri's the only one that would be aware enough of like observing our behaviors and interactions.
So I said, Adri, is there anything that mom and dad fight about? Like that you hear us fight or argue about, because sometimes they'll be around when like we'll argue in the car about like we're late because you didn't get the kids' shoes on or whatever else. And some people don't like to argue around their kids. I know my parents tried to avoid any arguments around us as growing up.
We'll talk about that though. It's a whole topic we're gonna touch.
Sorry, I'm not trying to sum it all up.
That's okay.
Now,
Anyway, so Adri, you asked Adri.
So I asked Adri if there was anything that we fought about, and the only thing that she said we fight about is like making food, which I do understand, like, because sometimes it'll be like, do we have whatever, I want to make this,
what are we gonna have for dinner?
Exactly.
Do you want to make it tonight? I don't want to. No, we don't have this.
Josh, you can't just make protein, you have to have side items. I'm like, what?
Josh also has this habit of like he'll make one food item at a time, so it'll be like, okay, the steak is ready, now I'm going to start on the potatoes. Okay, the potatoes are now ready, now I'm going to start on the broccoli.
Don't let me
and
plan
then it's
like
dinner. Is this like a meal that we have to eat over 3 hours? Like, you're supposed to have everything ready at once.
That's very true. I could have a great 5-course restaurant.
Yeah, no, that's the way Josh cooks. So that is a discussion that we have a lot. So yeah, no, that
it's because I like focusing on the one thing I have to cook. So I'm not a multi-cooker. I can't have 4 pots going at the same time.
Josh is not a multitasker. Actually, so that's kind of a good lead-in to kind of like my thought. So this is really kind of a funny topic, because people that meet us and know us, like at first I think people are very like hot or cold on their assumption. Like they assume probably we never fight, or they assume we must butt heads often. There's kind of no middle ground. Like nobody that meets us thinks like, oh, they must fight a normal amount. Like they either assume we never do or always do. And so it just is a funny like bit of feedback that I've gotten from lots of different people. And the truth is, actually, both are kind of right.
And obviously, we're using this podcast as our couples therapy. So this is us.
We are, This is our opportunity to spend time together.
You did this last weekend.
So I think though the truth is we are opposite in pretty much everything personality wise. Josh is an extrovert, a very aggressive extrovert. He desires that social time every day, as much of the day as possible. I do not. I am very much an introvert. Very much. Not a little bit, not like kind of. No, very, very much. Josh is a very spur of the moment, chaotic energy. I am a very type A planner, perfectionist. Josh is let's look for the next adventure. I am, let's think about the adventure for at least a year, maybe 18 months would be better, and plan out every minute, and then we can have a very scheduled and orderly adventure.
I will say, because of that, our vacations have been, or at least our vacations up until Kenzie's diagnosis, were amazing.
We're awesome.
Like,
we're
we did
awesome.
a good job. Like, we had it well thought out because of Katie.
Yeah.
And then we had a good time because, once I'm there, let's party. So.
Yeah. And, this became very evident. Like we, with our Sunday school class, did like this, like per the 16 personality quiz thing, and like the people shared their results and we talked about them and like looked at like the different couples, and Josh and I are opposite on all of them. So I am like the advocate, INFJ, and Josh is the exact opposite, the entrepreneur, the ESTP. So in every single measure, on the personality test, we are opposite, Now, that's not to say that like our values are opposite. That's not to say we share interests. But it is to say on like what makes us who we are, what makes us make choices the way that we do, what makes us make decisions. Our instincts are almost always opposite. It's very, very infrequent that we instinctively agree or make a choice the same way. Almost never. And as we've been married, I think we've learned a lot about the other person, and I think it's made us both better people. But still, like at its core, we are very different, like as different as could be. And so it does have the potential to lead to a lot of disagreements, like often in regular disagreements. I think that ultimately, though, we don't, like, yes, there's a lot of like that, like, do you have to chew so loud? Or like those little like, oh, look at the socks on the floor again, like those little silly things that we like to tease each other about. Or I have like, when I'm not pregnant, I have an energy drink that I really like. And Josh teases me because I'll like take a sip of it. And like for the first like 10 sips of it that I have, I go, afterwards. And it makes him crazy. I don't even know that I do it, but it just is like the first little bit of it. It's just so good. And it really annoys him, And I'm sure like me having to think things through so much and be so particular annoys him sometimes, or me needing a break from when we do social things makes him annoyed. Like Josh loves.
I'm like, why are we leaving? Why we can't leave now?
Right, exactly. We have
to open the party and close it. We can't just leave in the middle.
We need to be the first ones there and the last ones leave. And I'm like, can we make like a guest appearance for like 20 minutes and get out? Like it just and typically like once we're there, I have a lot of fun, mostly because Josh is there with me. But we are in those things, we are opposite. But somehow we don't fight or disagree a lot. And I think there's a couple reasons for that, but I think the main one is that we have learned to discuss things a lot. We talk a lot.
Well, no, yeah, definitely. And I think that's helped us sharpen each other to like understanding like what you prefer or like, and knowing what you need as far as like to be planned ahead, so that way it's not as spontaneous as I would maybe like it to be, but that way at least it's a logical way. I have some sort of way to approach a topic that's not going to send us in two opposite directions, but that we can like at least start with like, okay, well, I see you want to do this and you put some thought into trying to make it work, so now you're open to the idea of it, versus me just being like, it's time, it's doing whatever, so let's go do this thing.
Yeah, it's 3:00, let's go to the zoo.
So like I learned to like not be as like same day as spontaneous, but just sort of like, hey, in 3 days this thing could be something we could do,
right? And
sort of like try to plan a schedule of events.
And then we also learned, like, there are certain things that we can be spontaneous about.
Yeah.
Or there are ways, like I now just keep like the diaper bag packed, with like cups for everybody and a change of clothes for everybody, and just like the random things, so that there are things that are allowed to be spontaneous. Like, it's a nice day, let's go to the park. We had all these other plans, but let's just throw it all out the window and go to the park.
Which I can't say is ever, a great idea to throw all your plans out, but it has benefited us on occasion. So,
but like even though I want things to be planned and orderly, like it is important to Josh to have the opportunity to be spontaneous or to be, whatever. Mm-hmm. And so I've learned ways to kind of plan ahead, so that I can just say yes sometimes and sort of meet that need for him too.
Yeah, and I think knowing that we have a routine like we have, and I don't know if we'll talk about routine creation later or something, but there's like the windows of time in a daily routine or whatever where you're like, oh yeah, if I want to go ride bikes with the kids, like this is the good hour to do it. So
you're allowed to be spontaneous from noon to 4. So anything you want to do during that time, you go for it. Or
is the current routine stance.
Yeah, it is right now for us. Yeah. That is sort of our that's my time to go upstairs and work. That's your time to do whatever you want to do with the kids. Like you go do the crazy stuff.
Yeah.
And so there are ways that we've learned to compromise on that where it sort of respects my need for order, and it also values Josh's need for adventure and spontaneity. There is the opportunity to do both. I think ultimately, looking at those differences and valuing them is important. I tease Josh endlessly, and I'm sure people that know us or watch the podcast or listen to it hear me, talk about the fact that Josh is not a great multitasker. Josh is not a great planner, and some of those things. And I tease him about that terribly. But the same, and Josh is very kind to me and very generous to me that he doesn't call me a stick in the mud or, an 80-year-old in a 30-year-old's body or, because you could tease and poke fun at me, the same way. And I think you don't because you're generous. And you also know that my personality doesn't appreciate that kind of joke. Whereas you're like, yeah, that's true. That's me, and you're very, you're proud of who you are and you're okay with that, yeah. And so you're okay with me, teasing you about that because at the end of the day, that we are a team, so it doesn't matter. You don't need to be a good multitasker because you know that your teammate is.
Right. And I think I've come to an understanding of a missed opportunity now or this week or this moment when I want to go do it or whatever isn't necessarily a bad thing as far as there'll be another time or there'll be more experience that we can do maybe later and just in a better planned situation where it's not just we just go do something, but we actually plan to do it with a group of friends or make it more adventurous and, have a better plan behind it. Yeah. So I think I've learned that planning it out or planning ahead for something that does look like fun or would be fun to do right now could be better if there was a plan behind that.
Like the vacations.
So, yeah, exactly. So I think I've learned, over the course of 10 years and just figuring that 10 plus because we did that.
We passed that 10. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I just meant
with dating too. Yeah. We've been a good team for a long time.
Yeah, exactly. So, I know. I think that's been good for us. And even reading about ESTP earlier before starting this
the adventure.
I was like, man, no wonder you married me. I'm an awesome person.
I know. I had to read the
quote. ESTPs are
quote.
awesome. If you're an ESTP, good job.
Let me see. Well, let me see the quote I read. Because I pulled it up because I wanted to just kind of refresh our memory. And there's this quote. It says, life is either a daring adventure or nothing at all. And I read that and Josh goes, it's no wonder you married me. And he has such a sense of whereas I'm maybe one adventure a year sounds great, if we could just schedule that in, maybe in the summertime when things are kind of chill, Josh's that's not an adventure. What?
Adventure all the time.
So we are, but I think our mindset is, we bring all of these unique things, all of these very opposite things to the table. We discuss them together, we weigh them and measure them together. We talk about them together, and then we make a decision as a team. It's not you win or I win. It's we win or we lose.
Right.
And it's not whose idea is better. It's which idea is going to make our family unit or our relationship stronger. At the end of the day, we chose to marry each other because we liked each other for something, right? Like, yeah. And we both want the marriage to continue to be strong. We want our family to continue to be strong. And we know that starts with us. And so talking through things is important. And so for us, bringing those opposite opinions, bringing those very different approaches to the table, we can talk through and decide, you know what, your way of approaching this choice, the big decision, is better. After we've talked about it and thought about it, this is what we should do, and I'm not, then I can be okay with that, and then thinking too about things where, like, Josh can bring it to the table and say, I want to do more fun stuff with the kids. This is a conversation we have a lot, right? Mm-hmm. I want to have more opportunities to do fun stuff with the kids. It's a conversation that we have, right?
Yeah. I'm like, how do we do stuff that like makes memories for them? Like, I don't know. I know I have memories, and I don't know like how to. I don't know what my kids' memories are going to be, and I don't know. It's hard to think about sometimes.
And so
it is a spontaneous thing for me. So it's like, I want them to have good memories, but how do I do that for them? So,
right. Yeah. And that's kind of why we decided to sort of plan, a big chunk of time in every single day where Josh can take him to the park. Right now, a lot of days he's taking them to ride bikes or run at this trail. And it is just a fun thing that they do. And they come back and they'll be like, we saw a cat. Or like last time it was, Kenzie almost fell in the ditch,
Oh, man. It's not good.
And, but those are things that, like, it gives Josh the opportunity to, like, be silly, be spontaneous. The other day, like, they decided to bring pizza home, That wasn't the dinner plan. That wasn't, what I had intended. But Josh texted me and said, like, hey, we're bringing pizza home. And I could have been irritated. Like, I already thought out, whatever.
Right.
And I was like,
it's always better if it's thawed out and not already cooking. Once it started cooking, then you're like,
then you cannot do it. Josh has learned that. Problems,
so.
But
it's like you got to text before 4:00. Yeah. Is there something in the oven? Because if so, I will not do what I'm planning. So.
But and so again, it's kind of learning that, learning to be respectful of that, but also to just really value what your partner has to offer, and to always try to approach those things as a team rather than red versus blue, or you versus me, or I guess red versus blue is very timely right now, but like that if you're a team, if you're a unit, every decision you make, you either walk away both winners or you walk away both losers.
Right. I would say even through the last 2 years of like Kenzie's treatment and stuff like that, I think that's helped us as far as like taking on two separate roles of like you were at the hospital planning with Kenzie and I was home watching the kids, or at least in transition from whoever was watching the kids, I was helping out with doing stuff around the house and making sure that the house was maintained. And I think that gave us two, I don't know, not different mindsets of things, but that gave us two different responsibilities.
Right.
Not that you weren't responsible for the kids that were still at home. Obviously, you still loved them and cared for them and did all the things that they needed in addition to Kenzie's stuff of what was going on. But I don't know. I think it also provided, I know for a lot of people, it creates a lot of fights opportunity where it's like, you needed to be here, you need to do this for our daughter
this
that's
one,
sick. Yeah. Or whoever. And I don't know. I think we...
It did. I mean,
surpass that
somehow? And we'll talk about our biggest fight that will be coming in the upcoming podcast. The biggest fight we've had probably in the last 5 years. And we'll talk in great detail about that in another podcast. But definitely, Kenzie's treatment has been difficult because we've had a lot more separation. We've had a lot more like, you handle this stuff, I'll handle that stuff. And so we've sort of felt a lot of strain and tension on our team, where we're not always able to talk and make decisions together. You have to make your decisions and I have to make mine, and we have to trust that we're doing the best we can while we're separate. Mm-hmm. And so that has been hard, that has definitely shown like chips and fractures sometimes in our teamness. And so that is something that we've had to work through. And certainly, we have a lot of kids, we have a lot of animals, we have a lot of things that we do every day. And so at the end of a long day, I don't really always feel like being a team. I don't always feel like being, a good team player. I just want to be selfish for a little bit sometimes, and same for you, after a long day of work or after a long week, you don't always feel like being a good team player either. And so there are still those times where we get annoyed with each other, or where, one of us does something without thinking, and, there's sort of that irritation, or, so we do still have disagreements. We do still have, sort of just instinctively a lot of those things where it's like, why didn't you ask me before you did this? Or like, why didn't, and I think that that's true for both of us, where there's those things like, what were you thinking? And it's like, we have to kind of come back to the table and remember, like, I'm sorry, like I was a jerk because I was really tired, or because I've been stressed about work, or whatever. Like, I wasn't being a good teammate. Like, and I want to be a better teammate because I'm, only half as good when I don't have the other side of the coin's insight and opinion. And so we do, it's not all rainbows and butterflies and fluffy bunnies and whatever. There are times that I don't want to be a good teammate, and I think the same is true for you.
Right.
Or I don't feel like you're being respectful of my need for planning, or you don't feel, I'm being respectful of your need for spontaneity. And so we get defensive of that, we get defensive of like, these are my needs and they haven't been being met enough. And so we kind of have to like recognize, what, in order for us to be a good team, we need both sides to be met, relatively equally, to be the strongest, best version of our team unit, and so those things do happen, and we regularly have to kind of come back and say, like, what happened this week? Like, what, where have I missed the mark? Where have I not met your needs? Where have I not listened to your input? Because it's important, and the longer that you put those things off, the more fractured, the more chips start to show in that unified front. And like I said, we, in the height and midst of Kenzie's treatment, we did, have to do separate things a lot, and it was not fun. It was not fun, and it was hard. And it did lead to more headbutting. So then, we had to do, still be in the hospital and still be at home and still try to handle the things and feel at odds with each other. And it's hard. It's not fun. But it's important, I think, as you're trying to like come back to it, to have that teammate mindset.
Yeah.
Because that's the only way that you're going to have a good outcome.
Right. I mean, and I think we said earlier or whatever, like having that purpose of like knowing like we're here, we have to make the right decision for us, and it's not only for us now, it's for us and the kids,
right.
to go into whatever, the week's forward outlook is going to be. Like, we need to, resolve it, because they also are going to be a part of that decision. Yeah. And it's important for us to be on the same page, or at least be close to the same page that,
right. Or both be okay with the decision that's made. Like, we don't have to, we don't have to both agree. We don't have to like compromise. Sometimes it is all your idea. Sometimes it is all my idea, but we both need to leave the conversation in agreement, Yeah. Even if I'm still grumbling, I need to put it away because we agreed that this is what we're going to do. But ultimately, if we're a good team, that provides the foundation for the rest of our family, know. So there are a lot of little people counting on us providing a solid, strong foundation so that our kids can thrive and benefit. Yeah. And so at the end of the day, that's, if we keep in mind, like, we have to be a good team, because otherwise, we don't have a good foundation, then, it's going to be difficult. It's going to be difficult to raise kids. It's going to be difficult to do everything.
Right. Yeah. I think that's, and like you've said before, like I don't know. Like I said, my family, doesn't argue around us as for like even in front of us.
We probably should talk about that topic next, because you keep wanting to go to it.
Anyway. Yes. And so like I said, Adri said we mostly fight about food choices. So probably because I don't make enough items for variety all at the same time. So
we're like, we're having hot dogs for dinner. I'm like, great, hot dogs.
What else is going with it?
Is there anything green?
Yes. So, was there anything else you wanted to say?
I think that we pretty much covered it.
All right. So make sure you like, subscribe, follow, share this with anybody that you know is, has ever been in a fight with somebody else. So see if there's any good tidbits of wisdom in there for everybody. And make sure you follow us until the next adventure.
Bye.